Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron, and it is the game day preview for this weekend's action taking place in the Allianz National Football League. 16 games to run through, 16 games to cover in total. There's a whole host of action, a whole host of games to run through. I suppose, first of all, if you're new to the channel, if you could smash the like button, and of course for returning subscribers as well, if you could smash that like button, let me know in the comments down below what are your predictions for some of this weekend's games, and let me know in the comments live as well who will you be backing this weekend going into this weekend's round of the Allianz National Football League, because there's a whole host of games. Promotion, relegation could very well be decided this weekend in multiple different divisions, and there's just some really, really big games to discuss, no doubt about that whatsoever. So we will share the link as well for some of you lads to come on and jump on the stream and have your say joining the conversation. And happy St. Patrick's Day. Here we go. Yes, that's right. Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. I'm your host, Aaron Prendergast, as always. It is St. Patrick's Day, so happy Paddy's Day to anyone who's watching, and hopefully you grab yourself a couple of beers, because God knows I certainly will at some point later this evening. But undoubtedly, it's a bit chaotic in Dublin on Paddy's Day at times, a little bit crazy, a little bit mental, so you gotta watch yourself. But nothing better to do than preview this weekend's National Football League action, because things are really, really beginning to heat up in all four divisions. It's the penultimate round of games, round 6 in the Allianz National Football League. Some teams can secure promotion. Some teams could be relegated this weekend as well. So really, really a lot to play for, and a lot on the line for various different counties. And starting off with the Division 1 fixtures, I mean, you've got some big games. Kildare taking up going up against Monaghan in a really all-or-nothing clash in Division 1. I think whoever loses that could very much be down. We've got Tyrone, Mayo, Dublin, Donegal, Armagh, Kerry as well. So some really, really big games, no doubt about that. We will throw Division 1 up on the screen first of all before we run into the game, so we can see exactly where teams are standing. We've got Kerry on top there with 9 points, 4 wins from their 5 matches, and actually a win against Armagh this weekend will secure a league final. In fact, a draw would pretty much secure a league final at this stage, with the fact that they have a far better score difference. And you're looking down at the bottom as well. You've got Kildare and Monaghan. The loser of that could be in massive trouble. Tyrone obviously going up against Mayo at home, massive game for them as well. And can Dublin make it back-to-back wins this year, having seen off Tyrone last weekend? That is the big question indeed. So look, we'll start off with some of the games down near the bottom, and Kildare Monaghan is a massive game, no doubt about that. And Almighty Clasher was saying both have been incredibly even this year, actually, in terms of statistics as well, in terms of what they've both scored, what they've both conceded. They've very much been on an even trajectory, which kind of leaves me to believe that this is going to be a very, very close game. You know, Conor McManus, obviously, as we very well know, he's been exceptional for Monaghan for the last, 10 years nearly at this point. 113 in total, 1-3 from play. But I think the likes of Andrew Woods coming in there, I think has made a big difference. He scored 1-1 the last day and made a big impact in that win over Donegal. And he's been very impressive from a Monaghan point of view. And even when Conor McManus didn't play in the first couple of games, and obviously he was suspended then as well, you know, you've had Jack McCarron who's come in and stood up. And, you know, other than that Kerry game, you know, I think Monaghan have fought tooth and nail in every game, and they've given themselves a massive opportunity, in my opinion, to stay up, because it's firmly within their hands. They go away to Kildare, then they play Dublin. Even if they lose this game and then go and beat Dublin, they should be safe, I think, give or take, depending on other results. So, you know, it is a massive all or nothing clash really between these two. I think whoever loses is likely to be relegated. Again, it will depend on other results quite a bit as well. It will depend how Dublin obviously get on in their final 2 games, and Tyrone as well. But it's going to be interesting. I think from a Kildare perspective, I think even if they do go down, they do get relegated. I think, look, you're going down with a fight. And not to say that you will get relegated. I still think there's a massive, massive chance that Kildare don't. But, you've shown a tremendous effort, and I think you've proven as well that you can compete at this level of football. You can compete in Division 1. You can compete against some of the best teams in the country, no doubt about that. So, I think from a Kildare perspective, you'd be very, very happy with how this year has gone. And, Jimmy Hyland in sensational form. And if he can carry that form going into that Leinster Championship, 221 in total this year with 2-9 from play, I think you've got a chance. I really, really do. I think you've got a chance of maybe causing a bit of a shock in the Leinster Championship, but we'll wait and see. Paddy Woodgate, who's come into the team, I've rang his praises quite a bit already, a couple of times this year. 10 points so far, the majority of which from play in those 5 matches. And he's really that sort of he's that final piece in that jigsaw that is an already brilliant full forward line with Daniel Flynn in there as well. So, look, I think this game is going to be very, very close, and it's such a hard one to call. Kildare, they're one of them counties as well that when they're playing at home, when they're in Newbridge, they've got that sort of siege mentality a bit. They're very hard to beat there. We've seen them on numerous times produce big results. Obviously, this year they beat Dublin. They drew with Kerry as well, and that's the only game Kerry haven't won. It's worth obviously pointing that out. I know Kerry were a little bit maybe indifferent that day, first day of the league, probably didn't have a lot of their best players on the pitch. But, I think for Kildare, they can take a lot of positives from their home form. And Monaghan, every time you write them off and every time you feel like they're relegated, they come back from the dead. It wouldn't surprise me if they lost this game and then beat Dublin, because that's kind of their story of the last couple of years. They lose the games they should be winning, and they win the games they shouldn't be winning. So, yeah. Alan Fay says there, Dublin. Yeah, we'll get on to the Dublin game in just a moment. But yeah, in terms of this one, I'm going to go for a draw. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be really, really close. And I think maybe Kildare might build up a bit of a lead, and then Monaghan might find a way back into it. They might fight back a little bit, but it's going to be very close. It really, really is. Tyrone and Mayo's up next. And I mean, Tyrone, the second worst attack in the entirety of the National Football League this year. I mean, what on earth is going on there? I mean, and I know sometimes some people on this YouTube channel, when they leave comments or whatever, I know a lot of you lads sometimes have the best intentions, but sometimes, I think some people sometimes get a little bit, I don't know what it is when you criticize Tyrone. I think some people try to bring politics into it as well in the comment section, and I've seen a few bizarre comments recently when I've been criticizing Tyrone, and it's a bit like, what on earth, head in the sand type moment. I mean, look, I just don't think Tyrone have been good enough this year, but it isn't anything got to do with where they're located in the country. Do you know, it's nothing got to do with anything like that, And I think Tyrone, maybe because they've been so heavily disrespected by RTE and the media down the years, which I agree with, they kind of think everyone feels like that. It's not that way. I think Tyrone are a phenomenal team. I think if they can click into gear this year, I would still put them as maybe 3-4 in terms of the best teams in the country. The question is, though, how long is it going to be? Usually it's halfway through the league where you click into gear, and it just hasn't happened yet for Tyrone. As I said, second worst attack in the entirety of the National League behind Down. 250 in 5 games, 2 goals, 50 points in 5 games, an average of 11 points per game as well. So, and I think the thing I noticed as well from Tyrone is they don't seem to have that bite, that sort of nastiness in Tyrone. And I mean that in a positive way, where they make things really tough, physical. I remember that Mayo and Kerry game last year where they just made life very, very difficult. Mayo and Kerry had to work for every score. Tyrone were chasing every ball, 3, 4, 5 turnovers. And that sort of area between the half-back line and the half-forward line was really where Tyrone were doing the majority of their brilliant work. Midfield doesn't quite seem to be there yet. I know, obviously, Brian Kennedy hasn't played a lot of games this year. He's kind of been in and out of the team, but you would still feel Kennedy and Kilpatrick as that best midfield pairing that Tyrone have, because it was exceptional in the All-Ireland final last year. You still have Matty Donnelly to come back as well. he might maybe add a little bit more. But look, McCurry's been brilliant at times this year. He's been the only one, I think, who's stood up for Tyrone. But you're looking at Niall Sludden, Conor Moyler in there. They just haven't really delivered, as much as they did last year. Dara Canavan looks brilliant on the ball. He's got the skills. He's got the pace. Just lacking that end product so far this year. And look, I know they didn't do too well in the league last year, and that is fair, but they did get to a league semi-final. I think people are forgetting that. Just they were trashed by Kerry in that league semi-final, but that league semi-final had no weight on it because there was no final. So I do think there's a lot of missing context in regards to that. Gavin says Tyrone didn't do great in the league last year, and then won the All-Ireland, so you never really know Tyrone. And it is exactly the point. Look, if they can build a bit of momentum in the championship, beat Fermanagh, which I think they should be beaten. I know Fermanagh have kind of slightly improved, but there's levels to this, and Tyrone should win that. It'll be tough getting through Ulster, but you would be shocked if they weren't in a quarter-final, semi-final, and they're going to need to win games building up to that. And I think that will give them confidence. And look, from a Mayo perspective, they'll want revenge from that All-Ireland final last year, no doubt about it. I mean, that certainly would have been one of the All-Ireland finals that would have hurt them the most, given the fact that, they've done the hard part. They beat the Dubs in the semi-finals. I know people would look at Dublin now and think maybe, but Dublin were still the top dogs at that moment in time, and Mayo beat them and then lost in the final and didn't really perform in the final. And it was one of their first All-Ireland finals where they didn't actually perform and play that well. So, I think this is big one for, bigger for Tyrone. I think Mayo can afford to lose this game, but I think there would be an element of satisfaction from their supporters if they were to win this and potentially relegate Tyrone or send them closer to relegation in the process. I think Matthew Rowan has been exceptional for Mayo this year and probably doesn't get the credit that he deserves. He scored 5 points in his last 3 games. He didn't play in any of the first 2, or he didn't start anyways. So, I mean, he's just been brilliant in midfield. He really, really has. And I think he's the best midfielder in the country at the minute. I really, really do. Because he's tall, he's winning those high balls. He's adding points to his game as well. I think Fenton's still up there in my opinion. But I think Matthew Rowan on form, I think, has just been really, really good for Mayo. Aidan O'Shea at centre back is an odd one. He's played in almost every position so far for Mayo. Other than goalkeeper, I think he's has he played cornerback? Maybe he has at some point. I remember that game where he played fullback and marked Kieran Donaghy in the All-Ireland final. So it's a weird one with Aidan O'Shea. You want to play him at centre back, but is he gonna work there? I don't really know. Like, I think he's got the physicality, definitely. I still think maybe his best position is midfield. It's a strange one. It is a strange one because you don't want to include him in the team just for the sake of it, and then maybe you're taking out, a Paddy Durkin or an Oisin Mullen or something like that. And I think that's the thing. But we've obviously seen with the starting 15 from Mayo that's been announced, bit of changes in that team already. Kieran Lynch says hopefully Tyrone are trying to peak for the championship. Yeah, I mean, see, we're getting close to that championship though, and if they lose this game and then lose to Kerry as well on the final day, there might be a little bit of a worry there. The good news is, from a Tyrone perspective, I have seen a lot of people writing them off going to Killarney or wherever, whether it's Killarney or Tralee or wherever the game is. It's obviously in Kerry. But Kerry might be already in a league final by then, and they might rotate. They might change their team quite a bit. And Tyrone might actually have a chance for that game. But they need something here just for confidence, to get the support behind them, the fans behind them, all the rest. I just think Mayo would have enough. I really do. I think Mayo will have enough for this game. I think they've been better in general so far. We've been waiting for Tyrone to click into gear, and it just hasn't happened as of yet. So I think Mayo will win this by 3 points, and I do think Tyrone they're in massive trouble. I really do. I think they will go down at this point. I didn't think that a couple of weeks ago. Things can change very, very quickly. I thought Tyrone would beat Dublin last week. Didn't happen. So look, we'll see what happens. We'll take that with a pinch of salt. We really, really will. There's a few comments coming in there. If Tyrone win, Can they still go down? They could, but I mean, it depends on other results because, if Dublin win, that puts them on 4 points, depending on the Kildare Monaghan result as well. So it really does depend on other results. The crazy thing as well, like when you look at the league table, Tyrone could, technically speaking, avoid relegation without winning a single game, without collecting a single point in the last 2 games if Dublin and Kildare both lost their last 2 games. But so, it depends on other results, and other results will play a big part. So we'll definitely see what happens there. Thoughts on Offaly chance of survival, says Football Man. Yeah, we'll definitely get on to Division 2 in just a moment. But I think Offaly do have a great chance. I think they do. I think they're improving very, very much. They're starting to score a lot more. They're getting a lot of scores on the score sheet. Their fixtures in the last 2 games will be tough, but they have a chance, and we'll definitely get onto them and that Roscommon game in just a moment. But on to Dublin and Donegal. Dublin, obviously getting that win over Tyrone. Huge win from a Dublin perspective to finally record a win in 2022, because Dublin were potentially on the cusp of losing 6 games in a row for the first time in senior football. I mean, it's an interesting one with Dublin. You have some people who are on different spectrums with Dublin. Some people think they're, still going to win the All-Ireland. They're still contenders when they have the best start 15 on the pitch. They're up there, and they're going to challenge Mayo and Kerry and win back the All-Ireland. And then on the flip side of that, to some people who think Dublin are completely finished, they're gone, they're done. Even though they beat Tyrone, it's one result. Far too negative in the first 4 games, and they won't win anything of significance this year other than a Leinster Championship at the very maximum. I would say I'm somewhere in between that, and I don't think there's any problem in admitting that, and I think with Dublin in the first half, they were unbelievable against Tyrone. They were brilliant, as good as I've seen them probably in the last 2 years, you could probably say. They were exceptional, and when you add Costello back in there, it does change the dynamic a little bit. He's brilliant on the ball, and he can find scores from areas that we just weren't getting before, and he just adds something a little bit different to what we have. My worry though is still that kind of style of play and those same patterns and the slow build up, and we're not exactly free scoring either. We're averaging around 11 to 12 points per game, which won't win you in All-Ireland. Mayo or Kerry would be way too comfortable against a Dublin of that nature. Look, Dublin can improve. There's no doubt about it. And when they have their best starting 15 on the pitch, like Owen Merchant, James McCarthy, they definitely have the quality to win the All-Ireland. There's no doubt in that. And I think some people, and we're maybe just getting a little confused. I always felt like quality-wise, Dublin have the potential to win the All-Ireland because they won 6 in a row, and they beat all the best teams doing so. That Mayo team in 2017, even 2019, you could arguably say probably better than any of the teams they have right now, or any other teams that are available right now, or the Kerry team, I should say. Sorry, not the Mayo team. The Mayo team 2017, Kerry 2019. So, you're looking at it and thinking Dublin have the quality. There's no doubt about that, but it's just about putting it all together. And the style of play as well, and just belief, confidence, that kind of thing. That is the worry. That is the worry. But yeah, Alan says Dublin by 4. Yeah, I think I do think Dublin will win this game. Few people say Dublin by 2, Dublin by 5. I think Dublin should have enough because Donegal are just very inconsistent. And I think one player who's been brilliant from a Dublin perspective, Sean Bugler, even when we have been poor and we have struggled, he's been the one player who stood up, and he was brilliant against Tyrone as well. 11 points so far, and all of which have been from play. Yeah, Donegal are a weird one. They're a hard one to call. They seem to play brilliant one week and then go out the next and flatter to deceive, and beating Tyrone and then losing to Monaghan a week later probably sums Donegal up in the last couple of years. And I don't know what it is with them sometimes. They clearly have great players. They clearly have quality. Michael Murphy might start this game, having come off the bench the last time out, but will they want to risk him, with championship just around the corner and that big Armagh game? I don't know. I think maybe it would be a little bit risky playing him in this game, because I think you need him fit for that championship. We've seen what happened when he wasn't fit last year. Conor O'Donnell 1-9 from play so far this year. Michael Langan with 7 points from play, but neither scored the last time out versus Monaghan, which would have been a big disappointment from a Donegal point of view. So it's hard to know. I think both teams play a very similar style of football. Both play a running game, which I actually think will, could potentially suit each other a little bit. I'm not expecting a particularly great game, to be perfectly honest. I do think it will probably be low scoring. There might not be any goals in this one as well. So it'll be interesting. I think Donegal have got a chance of winning this, and I wouldn't exactly be shocked if they did beat Dublin. And maybe with the fact that Donegal are on 5 points and could still very well get dragged into this relegation zone, they might turn it on for this game, secure, try their absolute best to win this one, give 110%. Maybe they'll, sneak a victory by 2 points, and then they can rest players against Armagh in the league in preparation for a championship game, which is also against Armagh. So, a lot of permutations maybe going into it, but I do think Dublin will have enough. Match attacks, Kid says here, Sean is underrated. He scores some good points. Bugler is good. Yeah, he is. He definitely is flying under the radar quite a bit this year. And, maybe because Dublin have been very underwhelming in the first 4 games, there's no getting away from that. They were very poor in the first 4 games. But Sean Bugler was impressive in a lot of those games, and I thought he did step up to the mark where maybe some other players were just a little bit disappointing. So hopefully he can keep his form. He's definitely earned a starting position, in my opinion, in this team. And I think, going into that championship, that is a positive to take. So, yeah, look, I think Dublin will win it by 2 points. I think it'll be a close game, probably low score and probably not the best game. And I think Dublin really need to, they won obviously away in Tyrone, but I think for the fans and all the rest, let's give the Dubs a nice day out in Croke Park, because 4 defeats in a row in Croke Park. I don't know when's the last time that's happened. That's that'd be an interesting statistic right there. Maybe even the very first time that's ever happened. So, big pressure. But I think Dublin will just about have enough to squeeze a 2-point victory. You then have Armagh and Kerry. Kerry, with a victory here, can secure a National Football League final once again. This will be the 4th year in a row they'll have secured a National Football League final. Obviously, there was no final last year, because I don't even know why there was no final last year. It was kind of silly, but they would have been in that league final, obviously having beaten Tyrone, and the year previous they won the league without there being a league final, but they finished first. Obviously, COVID kind of interrupted that, and the year before they'd been beaten by Mayo in the league final. So, Kerry, very, very consistent in the Alliance National Football League. They've been, this is their trophy, really. This is their tournament. This is where they really deliver and show up. Obviously, they'd rather be more successful in the All-Ireland. But look, I think Kerry have done very, very well this year. They have the best defence in Division 1. They've clearly improved offensively. There's no doubt about that. And clearly the influence of Paddy Tally, who's come in there, has definitely rubbed off quite a bit. And, they're maybe not as free scoring as they were last year in terms of blitzing teams and in terms of, absolutely steamrolling teams. But I do think there was a few factors that come into that. I think conditions as well. They were playing, the league last year was in May and June. So, they were in much better conditions as opposed to, obviously, the last couple of weeks, which hasn't been that good. So I think from a Kerry perspective, I think they can take a lot of confidence from how well they've defended. But in terms of attack as well, you don't just have David Clifford obviously shooting the lights out. You've got Tony Brosnan coming in, scoring 1-2. You've got Paul Gainey, who's kind of, didn't play the last day, but looked in good form as well. Killian Spillane, been impressive. Darren Moynihan, just so many options in attack. Paddy Clifford as well. Sean O'Shea, who didn't even play the last day against Mayo, and you barely even missed them. I think that shows a lot really about the depth in Kerry's attack. And, they do have the best team in the country. I personally still think Mayo are going to be the ones to win it. I just think maybe when it comes down to the big mall, I don't know. It's very tough, probably a conversation for a different day. But look, Kerry are looking brilliant. But Armagh, on the flip side of things, look, if Armagh could secure a win here, I mean, what a huge result that would be for their supporters, for the home crowd. And I don't think getting into the league final is the be all and end all. I mean, it's always a bonus anyway. You're always looking towards that All Ireland, but I think for Armagh, the big focus really has to be in that Ulster Championship game against Donegal. I think that's really that's really what's going to define them and Kieran McGeeney, because I think getting to an Ulster final, winning an Ulster title, which they clearly have the quality to do, I think is going to be the most important thing, no doubt about it. I mean, we know the quality of Rian O'Neill, but I think Jason Duffy is a player that's really gone under the radar. 3-4 in total this year, all of which from play, which I think is absolutely brilliant. You've Tiernan Kelly in there, Connor Turbot, Ross McQuillan coming off the bench the odd game. So, Armagh are really well fixed. And look, their job in Division 1 is probably done in many ways. I think their main focus was to steer clear of relegation. They've done that. They've got 7 points on the board. At a minimum, they're going to finish third, I'd say. I think they play Kildare in their final game as well. Well, they played Kildare last week, so they can't play them. Who did they play? They play Donegal. Oh yeah, Donegal next week. Which I think they'd probably have enough to win that. So, I think it'll be a tough one, but I think Kerry are just the informed team, and that, even when they're rotating players, even when they're not at their best, their quality level just isn't as significant as other counties. You see with Dublin, when you take Costello out, when you take Dean Rock out, when you take even Bugler now as well, when you take these players out, there's a significant drop in quality for Dublin. And I think you could say the same probably about Armagh. I think Mayo have got a great squad as well. Maybe not so much with them, but I think everyone else, when you start taking out teams' best players, there is a drop in quality. But with Kerry, that's not the case. Even David Clifford didn't even start. I remember one of the league games as well against Donegal, I think it was, and they still won comfortably. So, I think Kerry will have enough here to win it by 2 points. I think Armagh will make it difficult, but I think Kerry will definitely have enough to secure the victory and secure a place in the National Football League final. And that's why I still think Tyrone maybe could have a chance next weekend, if it is next weekend when that game's being played, because Kerry might rotate even more. But then again, as we just said, when they've rotated, they tend to keep their quality. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But we'll move on to Division 2. Big. A lot of huge. I mean, there's huge games all over the country, really, but some really big games here. I mean, you've Galway going up against Derry, first against second in that division. You've got Clare and Meath, who are fourth and fifth respectively, and they're both playing each other. You've got Down and Cork in a real sort of toilet bowl game to see who potentially could stay up and avoid relegation to Division 3. So there really is all sorts of big games, no doubt about it. Obviously, Offaly and Roscommon as well, which are neighbours as well. So maybe a bit of a slight rivalry there. I'm not sure, but yeah. Well, we will start off by discussing Clare and Meath, fourth against fifth, as I said, both on 4 points. Really a relegation eliminator, you could say this. I think whoever wins this is, you're safe, you're done, you're grand. I think 6 points is more than enough. I think, you might even a draw in your last 2 games might potentially be enough. But, Clare have kind of been dragged a little bit back into it, as we've seen there with 4 points. Do think they'll be fine. And Meath obviously with a big result against Cork. Clare do play Down next weekend. Meath play Derry. So I think for Clare, even if they were to lose this game, I think they will be fine. I think they'll definitely have enough to turn over Down away from home. Speaking about Meath, first of all, or speaking about Clare, first of all, I think Clare's problem so far, it has been attacking wise. Only Tyrone and Down have scored fewer than them in the entirety of the National Football League. And, we know the quality that they have in Owen Cleary, David Tubridy, who have the ability to, produce outrageous scores, really scores that, you see pop up all over Twitter and people are talking about them and all the rest. And, very brilliant footballers. But, they haven't got they've still got enough from them. But, Keelan Sexton's been decent at times as well. But it probably is the quality of opposition that they're coming up against as well. And they've come up against some good defenses already in terms of the the likes of your Derrys and your Roscommons, who've been quite good defensively this year. So from a Meath perspective, though, look, I mean, are they turning the corner after that big win over Cork? I still think it's early days yet, to be honest, to start getting carried away or whatever. But look, I think, the find of Harry Hogan in goal, I think is massively important. I think Meath have really struggled with their kickouts down the years. I think that's been a big problem for them. When I've seen them here at Croke Park against Dublin, Dublin would push up on their kickouts and Meath would just struggle massively and consistently be turned over. Harry Hogan, 5 points in that game. So that tells you that, he's certainly got quite a range on his kickouts, and that could be a big moment for Meath in solving that goalkeeper crisis, which has been a problem in the last couple of years. And look, they were free scoring against Cork, 9 different scores. Jordan Morris with 1-2. So I think Meath will take a lot of positives from that big win over Cork. And I do think they'll have enough to avoid relegation. I know they play Derry next weekend, and that will be a very tough game. Derry could already have promotion sealed by then, give or take. So maybe they might, rest a few players here and there, although it's going to be very close between Derry, Galway, and Roscommon. But I think it's going to be a very tough game. And I think, you can never kind of discount Clare. They're always a tough, team to play. They're always competitive, even against Galway. Last weekend, they were very, very tough. I think Derry's the only team really who've beaten them at a canter this year. So, I think it'll be close. I'm going to go with a draw, which I think both teams will be relatively happy with. I think that eliminates any niggling relegation worries. And I think then, all your focus really can go on into the championship and kind of focusing towards that. And I think it is important for both of these two teams to avoid relegation, avoid that Tailteann Cup as well. And I think they will do exactly that. Cork and down, as I was saying there, there's an old expression sometimes in American sports where they talk about, the toilet bowl, the two teams who, were at one stage, exceeding expectations, were significantly brilliant, were up there competing at the highest level. And now we're, down near the bottom. How the mighty have fallen. The last time James McCartan was managing at senior level against Cork, it was in the All-Ireland final. And now it's in a battle to avoid what would be imminent relegation to Division 3. There's no doubt about it. Whoever loses this one is gone, because they're both on 1 point. Meath or Clare, someone's going to take points there. So that puts them out of the equation. And I think Offaly are motoring quite well at the minute as well. So, you'll be a little bit worried for whoever loses this game. Loser could be dragged into a relegation scrap. Yeah, in regards to the last game, absolutely. They could be. And Meath would be the only one I'd worry about out of the two if they did lose, just because they play Derry the following week. And, Cork, their final game is against Offaly as well. So someone there is going to get points. So, Meath aren't exactly out of it. But if they were to lose against Clare, there might be a couple of problems there. But yeah, getting back to this game, as I was saying, it's the worst attack. Worst attack versus the worst defense. Or the other way around, I should say. Cork with the worst defense, down with the worst attack. So who knows how this game is really going to go. I don't really think it's probably going to be hugely exciting looking at those statistics right there. But Cork, I mean, they're a joke, really, aren't they? 779 in 5 games with an average of 20 points conceded per game. I mean, it's ridiculous, really. It's like watching, if the hurlers were conceding that much, maybe you'd be a bit worried. But then again, there's always more scores in hurling. But it's like a hurling statistic. It really, really is. I mean, 7 goals and 79 points. It's just mental. It really, really is. And they have the worst defense in the entirety of the league, as I was saying. Carlow are the only team that's slightly below them. But then when you look below Carlow, there's a big drop for the team who has the third worst defense, which is Fermanagh, I believe, at the minute. So, you're looking at it and thinking, I don't know what's happened. There's so many counties who produce brilliant under-20 teams. And maybe not all of them reach that pinnacle. But for example, you're seeing with Kildare, players like Hyland and Paddy Woodgate who've come into the team, Aaron Masterson as well. These kind of lads who are now making it into that team. and you see with Dublin and some of the under-20 wins they've had and some of the players they've brought through, Galway who've done it now as well. Cork just don't seem to be doing that at all. I just don't know what the story is there. You have Blake Murphy kind of in there, and Cathal O'Mahony's back from injury, I think now, which I think is a positive. But worrying times for Cork. But the good news is, the only team worse than them really in this division has been Down, and I think this will be the perfect opportunity for Cork to register their first win of the season. Look, for Down, they showed a bit more promise than I thought they would against Offaly. I actually thought Offaly would beat them a lot more comfortably. They've obviously got Niall Kane in goal, who made his debut. He was part of the Kilcue team who won the All-Ireland, so great to see him in the team. Barry O'Hagan shown a little bit of form with 4 points against Offaly, but they're just not scoring at all, and there's just really, they're just not scoring enough. They're not creating enough. A lot of chopping and changing within the team, within the panel. And will some of the Johnsons come back in from Kilcue? It's looking unlikely at this point. So I don't know. Sir Klopp says Down to get revenge in Cork for 2010 and put the final nail in the coffin. Well, I suppose it would be some story, no doubt about it. And the funny thing is, whoever wins this game could potentially still go down. Like, even if Down win this game, they play Clare next week, and that's a tough one as well. So, it's one of them where whoever even wins this game could potentially still go down as well. They really, really could. Cork going away to Offaly, which will be a tough one. So, Sir Klopp says Down by 1. I'm going to go with Cork. I think maybe they just have a little bit more going forward. But I think it will be close. I really do. It could be a draw. So I think I'll go with Cork by a point. But, any result here wouldn't really surprise me at all. It really, really wouldn't. You've then got Offaly and Roscommon. There was a comment coming in there from GAA Edits who says Offaly aren't out of the woods yet. I mean, they definitely aren't. They've got 3 points on the board so far this year. Definitely not out of it, no doubt about it. And you would expect Roscommon to win this game. But the good news is for Offaly is that they do play Cork at home next weekend, which, I think that will be the real sort of acid test for Offaly in terms of avoiding relegation. I think this game against Roscommon in many ways is, it's not a free hit because every game matters, all the points matter, but Roscommon will be the significant favourites going into this game. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Roscommon, it's a must-win game. They have to win this game if they want to keep promotion hopes alive. They're the second best defence in Division 2 and the second best defence in the entirety of the league behind Derry. Niall Daly back in there is a huge addition, adds a little bit of solidity to the squad as well in and around the middle. Cathal Hennihan keeps improving as well. Like, keeps scoring off the bench. He's knocking on the door in terms of being a regular starter. So there's definitely a positive from a Roscommon point of view. Offaly of the third worst defence, meanwhile, in the entirety of the league. So it wasn't Fermanagh there, my mistake. Behind Carlow and Cork. So that kind of tells you really, Roscommon, a brilliant defence. Offaly maybe not so much so. And you could see Roscommon's forwards kind of unlocking Offaly, in this game. The likes of Enda Smith, Conor Cox, these lads, Cathal Hennihan coming off the bench as well. So I think they will have enough to win the game. The positive from an Offaly point of view is they had 11 different scores against Down, which is quite the statistic, really, when you think they only scored, they scored 15 points in that game, but 11 of which from 11 different players. Bernard Allen, Rory McNamee, Niall McNamee as well. Dylan Hoyland has done well. You've got super sub Anton Sullivan, who is doing well. 1-4 in his last 2 games from off the bench. So they have a bit of in attack there, but I think Roscommon will have enough here, in my opinion. I think Roscommon, they have enough. Sir Klopp says Rossies by 6. Yeah, I'd go along with your prediction there, mate. I think Roscommon should have enough to win this one comfortably enough. Derry and Galway is up next, and as we were seeing there in the league table, both obviously first and second, and definitely the biggest game probably in Division 2 in terms of who could be coming up from promotion. And we were talking about Cork and Down, where it was the worst defense against the worst attack. This is the completely flip of that, where it's the best defense versus the best attack. So, the kind of the placing of some of these games this weekend is a little bit interesting. But, I think the thing that impressed me the most from Derry against Roscommon was just the fight. They were 4 or 5 points down, probably a position that Derry haven't found themselves in too often in the last couple of years when you think of how convincingly they came through Division 3. And obviously Donegal, they were behind a little bit in that game, came back. They obviously showed a lot of fight that day as well. But coming back in the way that they did from, I think, 4 or 5 points down to actually leading, and probably actually should have won the game. But, a lot of fight in that team. And as I said, the best defense, Derry are the best defense in this league, in the entirety of the National League, and by quite a margin actually as well, which I think gives them a lot of confidence. I think Brendan Rodgers, not the ex-Liverpool manager, but yeah, Brendan Rodgers of Derry in a fullback, he's been brilliant this year. He really, really has. He's been exceptional at fullback. He even scored the last day against Roscommon as well. So, I think when I make my football team of the year for the National League, I think he's getting in there. I really do. He's been brilliant. Shane McGuigan, he's been excellent as well, he scored 8 points against Roscommon, and he's been the sort of main man going forward. But, obviously it's the best defence, but their defence is going to be put to the pin of their collar in this game, no doubt about it, because Galway have the best attack. And Edit's coming back in there. Derry and Galway is a flip of a coin. And absolutely, mate, absolutely. That's it's such a hard one to call because Galway have been sensational going forward. Best attack in the league by quite a distance. And they're the only team with a 100% winning record. But the only thing for Galway is we haven't really seen them tested yet. They play Roscommon next week, Derry this week. Their fixture list has been kind up until this point. Clare last weekend as well. So, I think from a Galway perspective, this is really going to be the acid test for them now going into these last 2 games, going away to Derry as well, going away to Roscommon. Really, really tough games. And, I've seen some people saying Galway are dark horses for the All-Ireland. I don't quite buy it. They're still quite poor defensively. They've had a couple of leaks defensively this year, conceding 217 against Cork, I think it was. So their defence isn't quite there yet. And I think for Pádraig Joyce, it's always been about finding that balance between attack and defence. But look, maybe with the fact that they were playing, with all due respect, your Offaly's, Meath, Cork, who really aren't great going forward. Maybe they were a little bit more free-flowing and they said, look, we'll make it a shootout and we'll get the ball to Shane Walsh, Damien Comer, Tom O'Callaghan, and just make it happen. So maybe they might be a little bit more defensively in this game, but I think Derry will have enough. I really do. I think they'll win it by 2 points. I think they've been just that bit better, and I do think whilst Galway defensively have struggled quite a bit, and I think Derry's attack is actually it's still up there as one of the best attacks in this division. So no doubt about it. No easy games left for Galway, Derry, Rossies, and Mayo next 3. And that's the big one for Galway. I mean, it's not inconceivable that they lose their next 3 games. It really, really isn't. And then they go into the qualifiers, and you just never know. So I think for Galway, the next 3 games are really, this is really where we'll know how good they just are. And look, if their attack continues being as good as it is, maybe they might outshoot some teams. But when you come up against the best teams, I think they will be able to find a way to beat Galway, but we will see what happens there. We'll move on to Division 3. You've got Antrim and Louth there in first and second. Antrim with 7 points, Louth with 7 points as well. I mean, this division, as we were saying in previous weeks, is just a bit mental, a bit chaotic, because you've got Laois who could very well get relegated, but yet they're actually only 2 points off first. So it really, really is all to play for. And all of these games are basically like knockout games. They're basically almost like championship games in many ways, because, you've got that chance to finish in the top 2, go into the All-Ireland series as well. If none of these sides are probably going to make a provincial final. So it gives these counties a chance to be in that in that All-Ireland series, which is obviously what majority of counties want to be in. So there's some big games. There are some big games this weekend, and I suppose we'll start with Laois and Limerick because it's two teams very even so far this year in terms of statistics and all the rest. I mean, they've both scored and conceded very much the same. And look, Laois, that was a big win for Laois against Wicklow last time out. I mean, to put up a big scoring 117, which was their highest tally they've finished with in a game this year. Will definitely give them a lot of confidence after a couple of bad results back to back, obviously losing to the likes of Fermanagh, I think it was, and Westmeath. So that would have given them a bit of confidence. And Gary Walsh has obviously been, the top man this year. But good to see Evan O'Carroll back scoring again, 1-2 against Wicklow. So, and as I mentioned before, Mark Barry's been a good addition coming up from the under-20s. Was a bit disappointed with Limerick against Westmeath. Finishing the game with just 1-6, which was a lot less than they scored in any of their previous games. Limerick had one of the best attacks in the league up until last weekend, but they didn't, they barely scored last weekend. So it was a bit of an unusual performance, and maybe credit has to go to Westmeath, who obviously, must have shored up quite a bit defensively. Maybe just like a little bit over reliance on goals. Limerick will be shook after the Westmeath game. Limerick by 3 there as well. So yeah, I mean, look, 9 goals so far this year, so they have been quite over reliant on goals. And Josh Ryan, Hugh Burke, I think with Limerick, they're just lacking that, killer forward or that sort of marquee forward. I think, if you had a Sean Quigley or a Sam Mulroy or a Connor Sweeney in this Limerick team, I think they'd be up in first position and they would be promoted. So yeah, very, very hard one to call. Sir Klopp says Limerick by 3. I don't know. I think I'm going to go with a draw with this one, just to keep the Division 3 madness wide open. But it's going to be very, very close, very, very close indeed. You've then got Longford and Wicklow. A must win for Longford, really, if they have any hope of avoiding relegation. I mean, they got that big win over Westmeath, and then they followed that up with a 10-point defeat away to Antrim. I mean, they would have been heavily disappointed with that. Longford were a Division 3 team last year. Antrim were a Division 4 team last year. It was only a couple of years ago where Longford were nearly knocking on the door of getting promotion to Division 2, and Antrim were in Division 4 that year as well. So, how far ahead the Antrim looked over Longford would have been a bit of a disappointment, I'd imagine, to Longford supporters. I mean, losing away to Antrim in Corrigan Park, it can happen. It's happened before, but by 10 points, a little bit disappointing there. And I think score difference is going to be huge in this division as well. And I think Longford would have been very disappointed with that. Jason Matthews, Jack Duggan have done all right. There definitely is an over-reliance on Darren Gallagher in the middle, who takes a lot of their frees. So, yeah, look, from a Longford perspective, they'll be disappointed with how that game went, but they should have enough to beat Wicklow here, I'd imagine. Like, if they want to survive, if they want to avoid relegation, and actually, interesting enough, they play Laois next weekend. So if Laois were to lose to Limerick and then Longford go and beat Wicklow, it sets up a grand finale, really, for who else could be going down in Division 3 on the final day. So I think for Longford, it's still kind of in their hands to some degree. They just need to win their last 2 games, and I think they will win this game. I think, I think for Wicklow, it was probably a bold prediction to think that they would beat Longford or they would beat Laois, and they obviously didn't. They were heavily beaten, and it was actually the first time this year that they were heavily beaten as well. And they're the one team in all 4 divisions that's 100% gone. In my, I know mathematically it's not proven just yet, but they're 4 points behind Laois, 2 points behind Longford, and even Laois and Longford have to play each other as well. So that, they're pretty much gone. I think their preparation will very much go towards, opening round of the Leinster Championship and obviously Tailteann Cup as well, which, look, I think they've got some good players. I think they've got some good players coming through at under 20 level. And obviously they've had changes in management as well. So it's been very difficult for them. They've had a lot of disruption as well throughout a National League campaign, which doesn't go too well. Sir Klopp says Longford by 4, and yeah, I'd agree with you there as well. I think Longford should have enough to win this one quite comfortably. You then have Louth and Antrim, who are battling it out 1 versus 2 in this division, or 2 versus 1, you could say. With the winner, and the crazy thing is, the winner of this game would go to 9 points, and you'd surely think that they're going to get promoted. But this division is just so mental. Like, if Westmeath go and beat Fermanagh, they then go up to 8 points. Laois beat Limerick, or whoever wins that game, they then go up to 7 points. So, it's really not over even if you win this game, or even if you lose it. So, it's crazy stuff really in this division. Antrim are top of this division right now, but they've a tough last 2 games: away to Louth, home to Westmeath. And if they don't beat Louth and then they host Westmeath, Westmeath could win that game. It's not inconceivable. So yeah, this is going to be a very, very interesting game, no doubt about it. But look, you have to give credit to Antrim. They've been superb. Don't think many people really expected them to be in this position at this stage. And if someone had have told Antrim fans you'll be first going into your final 2 games, and you'll have a significantly better score difference as well, which I think is worth pointing out. They're on plus 21, and I think a lot of the other teams are on plus 7, plus 5. So I think that is a significant advantage, because if it does go down to score difference and they're on the same points as another team, I think they'll probably finish above them. So I think that's huge. It really, really does. And, there's a best defence in this division. So, that sort of Enda McGinley influence is definitely rubbing off on them. But they're getting scorers up top as well. And Oren Eastwood, Rory McCann, Mark Jordan, playing in that wing-back role. So I think for Antrim, they'll take a lot of confidence. But, we obviously know the hype with Louth and Samuel Roy and how good he is. One of the best players in this division, no doubt about it. But, players like Liam Jackson, Kieran Byrne have been doing pretty well as well, to be fair. I think they've been doing good, whether it's coming off the bench or starting. So with Louth being at home, I think they might just have enough to edge it. It's a hard one to call, though, and Antrim have been one of those sides that I've probably wrote off quite a lot in this division, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I thought they'd get relegated, and here they are. So, I think they deserve a lot of credit either way, and there's definitely still in the mix. But I think Louth at home, given the momentum that they're on at the minute, that big win over Fermanagh the last day out as well, beating Westmeath as well. Like, they've beaten some big teams already this year, so I think Louth will just about edge it. If Antrim get GAA edit says if Antrim get promoted when they lose in Leinster, they could be playing the likes of Derry or Galway, and then we'll see where they are. Yeah, and look, it would definitely be exceeding expectations in many ways. You meant Ulster, yeah, Ulster. If they were exceeding, if they're in Division 2, they're definitely exceeding expectations in many ways, and it would be huge for Antrim to go up to Division 2. Don't know the last time they've been there, probably a long time, I'd imagine. So, and to do it so quickly as well under Enda McGinley, very, very impressive. And, if you're a Tyrone supporter, I think you're watching what Enda McGinley is doing there, and you're getting excited, because at least if Fergal, Logan, Brian Dooher aren't going to go anywhere anytime soon. And they shouldn't, because obviously what they won last year, but there is someone else there that you can look towards. So positive stuff, no doubt about it. Moving on then to Westmeath and Fermanagh, another huge game, and for Westmeath, big win obviously away to Limerick, which definitely put them firmly back in the promotion race. Fermanagh definitely still in there, but they would have been disappointed obviously having lost to Louth. But from a Westmeath perspective, as I said, big win against Limerick, and defensively as well, conceding a lot less than they did in the last 4 games, which I think was big. And I think that was, significant. And, obviously not having seen the game, because we didn't really get any highlights of it. I remember last year Westmeath were quite defensive at times, and I imagine maybe they shifted a little bit back to that for this game, and that's probably, hence why they only conceded 1-6. So, look, Luke Loughlin, who's come back in this year, he scored 1-3 in that game, but 1-2 from play, so big performance from him. We know the quality of John Heslin. Ronan O'Toole's been a good player as well. Fermanagh, on the other hand side, they're a weird team, and their sort of record in this division probably sums up how crazy this division actually is, because they've actually scored and conceded the exact same. They've 79 both for and against, which a little bit unusual at this stage of the season to have that kind of record. So they've let in 8 goals in 5 games. They've conceded a goal in every game, which would be worrying. Sean Quigley has been exceptional, but I think for Fermanagh, realistically, given how the league started with the draw against Wicklow and the defeat to Antrim, I think Fermanagh fans at that moment in time would have been happy probably to avoid relegation. So I think Westmeath will have enough here, in my opinion, to win this one comfortably enough. I think 2 or 3 points should be the margin. Moving on then to Division 4. You can see there you've got Cavan and Tipperary leading the lights there at the top. You've got Sligo in third with 6 points, Leitrim with 6 points there as well, London with 6 points. So very much all still to play for at this point. I do think it's there though for Cavan and Tipperary. You're looking at Cavan and Tipperary's final last 2 games as well. Cavan play London and then Waterford, whereas Tipperary play Carlow and then London. So you would suspect that I think the top 2 there will stay as it is. And I think both, having had a very bad last year, obviously having been relegated from Division 3 in quite exceptional circumstances, obviously having won their provincial titles just a couple of months previous, I think they'll have enough to be promoted. London versus Cavan, first of all. Cavan, having lost that game last time around against Tipperary, as a matter of fact. A little bit more low scoring than usual from a Cavan perspective. They haven't been free flowing in terms of goals, but they have been hitting quite a lot in terms of points, from 15 and above nearly in a lot of their games. I think for London, really, their fairy tale story is probably over. And I think, look, the fact that they're actually still in contention with 2 games remaining, if you had told that to a London supporter before a ball was kicked this year, they would have took that. They're still in with a chance, and maybe they could do something here at home. They've been very competitive. You just don't know. Could Cavan slip up away to London and somehow not get promoted, which would be, that would just be mental if they didn't get promoted from here. But yeah, you would suspect Cavan to have enough here with Gerald McKiernan and Paddy Lynch, who's looked good this year. So I think Cavan should have enough. And I think from a Cavan perspective as well, the fact they play Waterford next weekend as well, with all due respect to Waterford. And I think they'll want to win this game, secure promotion, maybe rest a few lads against Waterford, rotate the squad quite a bit, and then focus on Antrim in the opening round of the championship. So I think Cavan comfortably enough have, Sir Klopp says, have a feeling London will put it up to Cavan. Their home form has been excellent. Yeah, they've 2 out of 3 wins this year. 2 wins from 3 games at home this year. So that, their home form has been really, really impressive. And I think the fact as well that I think London GAA are allowing any supporters for that game to come in for free. Any London supporters. So I think that's a fantastic initiative, really, to get more fans watching the games and everything else. And it probably does make a bit of an impact. So yeah, I think, look, all of Cavan's games have been relatively close this year. So I think it will, there'll only probably be 4 or 5 points in it, but I think Cavan will have enough by 4 points. You've Waterford and Sligo then. Sligo, they've been brilliant so far in terms of scoring. They've one of the best attacks in the entirety of the league. I think Galway probably only have a better attack than them in the National Football League so far this year, which tells you how free scoring they are. Yep, that's correct. Actually, Galway with the better attack, Sligo with the second best attack in the league, and that tells you quite a lot about how free scoring they have. Now, there may be some anomalies. You could look at 28 points against Carlow, 319 against London, but I think the thing to be impressed about from a Sligo point of view is that, when they're playing well, they're playing brilliantly well, and they're free scoring and they're taking their opportunities and they're putting up high tallies. And I think it would give Sligo a lot of confidence because they do have a good crop of younger lads in there, like Noel Murphy, who's been brilliant, scored 2-4 the last day out. Or maybe he scored 2-4 from play, I think, overall this year, which is very, very impressive. So, Sligo are definitely in the mix. They're definitely in contention still to get promoted. And from a Waterford point of view, I mean, you don't really know what to say about them at this point. They've nothing to play for at all in these last two games, and I think really it's just all about Tailteann Cup and whatever you can do. Maybe you might pull off an upset or a shock. Who knows? As I said, Dara Corcoran's looked good there so far this year. He's been their top scorer, but you would fancy Sligo surely with how free scoring they have been, and the fact that they've been really rootless actually in front of goal. I think they should have enough. They definitely should. And what's interesting as well for Sligo, Leitrim next up next weekend away as well. That could be maybe an all or nothing game in terms of promotion. Division 4 has a huge gap from Division 3, in my opinion. I don't know. I think I might disagree with you there, because I think you look at Louth and Antrim, who've come up this year. Both are in first and second in Division 3. I don't think the gap is that big between a lot of those teams, really. You're seeing in Division 3 a lot of teams beating each other, and even in Division 4, you're seeing Tipperary, who got absolutely hammered by Leitrim, drew at Waterford, but then have won their next 3 games, including the best team in Cavan, or the best team in Division 4 at this moment in time in Cavan. So I think the gap isn't probably that big, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think Sligo will have enough here. I think they'll win it by Mr. Klopp says Sligo by 17. I mean, look, the way Sligo are beating teams at the minute, you just don't know. But Waterford have been competitive enough in their games, even when they've lost. So I would give them a bit more credit. I think Sligo by 6 maybe we'll go for. But look, you don't know in Division 4 times. You can get some crazy scorelines. Leitrim and Wexford in the next game. Leitrim, as we were saying, kind of in the same boat as Sligo, really need to win to keep alive their promotion hopes. Wexford have a kind of not really much of a chance at this stage. Like, they're 3 points behind Tipperary, who are in second. So I don't think promotion is on the cards for them, unfortunately. They need too much to happen, and it's just not going to happen for them this year, unfortunately. But for Leitrim, they have a weird record. They've lost all their home games, but won all their away games. So an unusual statistic right there. And, as we were saying, like, with the fact that Tipperary are playing Carlow, which we'll get on to in a minute, which I think Tip will win. I think Leitrim and Sligo need to win in these 2 games, and then they play each other in the final game, and they'll hope either Tipperary or Cavan can slip up somewhere along the way. But I don't even know if that's going to happen either, to be perfectly honest. So big game for Leitrim. I mean, Emma Mulligan's been very good so far. Keith Byrne, top scorer in the entirety of the National Football League this year. So, I mean, he deserves a lot of credit for how well he's performed. So Leitrim are going good. Like, they're doing all right under Andy Moore, and they're still in contention. Obviously, the first year for Andy Moore this year is still a building year as well, trying to try different players out. So we'll see what happens. Leitrim are an okay side, dark horses to get promoted. Wexford playing for pride. Andy Moore and Leitrim still have everything to play for. Yeah, it's a fair point. It's a fair point right there. And I think Leitrim will have enough to win this one. I think it'll be a close game, though. And Leitrim, as we said, at home have been a little bit unusual at times. And Wexford as well have produced some mad results at different stages. Kind of just generally like that in Division 4. So, yeah, I think Leitrim will have enough to win it by 2 points. Tipperary and Carlow last, but not least. Well, depending on where you're from, I suppose. But look, Tipperary, now they've turned things around massively. You would have been massively worried if you were a Tip fan, having watched the opening 2 games, drawing with Waterford and losing to Leitrim in the way that you did as well, which was very, very disappointed. But 3 straight wins, big win over Sligo, who are promotion contenders, big win over Cavan, who are promotion contenders. So, I think from a Tipperary perspective, you'll be very, very positive going into your last 2 games. As I said, Tipperary home to Carlow, and then home to London. So, Tipperary, I think they should get 2 wins from those games. They really, really should. But again, Tipperary are a weird side where they do tend to play better against teams that, are in form. Like you look last year, for example, or a couple of years ago when they beat Cork in that Munster final, having scraped past Limerick in the semis. So Tipperary is a little bit an unusual team at times. Carlow, on the flip side of that, you've obviously had Conor Crowley, who's done well. Dara Foley, a lot of experience coming back into the team. But you would surely expect Tipperary to have enough. And I think I would go with probably 7 points here for Tipperary. I think it'll be fairly comfortable, to be perfectly honest. Carlow have the second worst defence, as I said, in the entirety of the league based on what they've conceded. And obviously, given the fact they're a Division 4 team, I think it's respectful to say that they probably do have the worst defence in the league, or in Ireland, or in the entirety of the National Football League pyramid. So yeah, I think Tipperary will have enough and they will win the game quite comfortably. Tip are still unpredictable. Wouldn't be surprised if Carlow make them work. Tip by 5. Yeah, they are. You just don't know what you're going to get sometimes in these Division 4 games. Work Mail says very pro Derry in the media over the McGuigan incident while ignoring the many changing moments that went against Roscommon. Yeah, look, unfortunately for myself, I can only go on highlights and everything else and match reports and whatever you get to see on the Allianz League Sunday. So I don't really know, but I think Derry are looking good. They're playing well. I think they will beat Galway, but look, they haven't played too many significant teams in the last couple of years, so we'll really know more about Derry in the next couple of weeks and months and whether they are going to live up to the hype. So yeah, there we go. There's all the games. There's all the big talking points. Let me know your predictions in the comments down below as well. In terms of game of the week or player of the week, I mean, I suppose you are looking at that Derry and Galway game, to be fair, and we'll know a lot more about either one of those two counties when that final whistle goes. Are Galway, is their defence going to be a problem? Could it catch up with them? Can Derry take out or beat one of the big teams one of the significant teams in this division who've had a 100% record? And obviously looking at Division 1, I mean, there's just so much on the line there as well. And you're looking at could Tony Brosnan definitely a player to watch from a Kerry perspective. Sean Bugler for Dublin as well, I think could really, really turn it on in Croke Park. Could Conor O'Callaghan come back to the team for Dublin? We just don't know at this point. We really, really don't. But yeah, we will go ahead and wrap this up here. So yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Cheers anyone who tuned in. If you could leave a like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Have a very good St. Patrick's Day. Drink lots of beer if you're of age, of course. And enjoy the day. Enjoy the long weekend. And plenty of match reactions to come. Plenty more videos to come. So I'll see you